Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Ryan. I'm with Halt the Harm Network. And if you're just tuning in, please take a moment, say hi in the chat. It's great to see so many people joining us today. The numbers keep climbing. We're up to 42 now. Hey, Michelle, Paul, Frank, Lynn, Julie, Patricia. Great. It's great to see so many people. And it looks like there's folks from around the country a bit as well, not just in Pennsylvania. So we're definitely really excited to see people coming in and paying attention to this story from a variety of places. So today's event, where I'm so honored to be able to host this conversation, Titans of Plastic, a conversation about the story by Environmental Health News and Sierra Magazine. And we've got an excellent group of people today, panel discussion to talk about this story. Douglas Fisher from Environmental Health News is going to be stepping in for Kristina Marusic, who's not feeling well today. So thank you so much, Douglas, for stepping in. Kristina, we're sorry that you can't make us today and look forward to having a conversation with you at some point. Excellent work on the article. We've also got Bob Schmetzer here from Southwest Pennsylvania, Terry Baumgartner, Rachel Meyer, and Lois Bjornson is going to be joining us as well. So thank you all so much for coming. Just want to take a moment and say hi and give you a chance to introduce yourselves. We'll start with you, Douglas.
Yeah, thanks. Again, really an honor to be here to see so many folks who are so engaged. I am Douglas Fisher. I run the organization Environmental Health Sciences. It's a nonprofit news and science organization that tries to drive good science about our health and environment into public policy. And we do that via some science work, but we also do it by journalism, by getting news out into the public that affects our health. And we've had Kristina. Kristina has been kind of embedded. She's been our reporter in Western Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh for 5 years now, and has just, the whole theory was that she gets in there and starts reporting on this, and then it's almost like a snowball where other people, other media outlets start to see the reporting, and really we want to shine a national spotlight on local issues and just really just highlight just how, you know, these local issues are just not just local. They ripple outwards, and I think there's really no better example than this ethane cracker that is going to open up at any day now. And so there's been lots of little reporting on this. This piece that we're publishing today with Sierra Magazine is an effort to really just tie it all together and to show that, you know, this is our plastics future that we're building out here. This is our climate future that we're kind of nailing down. This is a huge facility that's multi-billion-dollar facility that's going to kind of set the course, and it's being driven by demand. And I think it's also very interesting that our piece came out completely coincidentally with the ruling out of Louisiana that I'm sure many of you have already heard about, the Formosa Plastics ethane cracker there. $9.4 billion facility, almost the exact same thing as what's going on in Pennsylvania. But there, a state judge just basically vacated all 14 air permits, saying that the state regulators did not really account for the health of the people in approving this plan. So there's lots of interconnections with this. I'm looking forward to the discussion today. I'm not the reporter. Kristina, you'd be much better served if it was Kristina who was here talking with you. But she's not feeling well, and I just wanted to help represent and meet all of you guys who are here.
Thanks, Douglas, for introducing that a little bit and stepping in. We're going to start by playing like a 3-minute clip from the story, a video that was featured at the top of the story, just to get things started. And then we're going to open this up and have more of a panel discussion. So I'm going to share my screen here and get that queued up.
They're going to be making the nurdles, little balls of plastic. They can send that out to manufacturers. They could heat that up and blow it into molds and make all kinds of different plastics. Shell came through with a narrative that they are going to create all these jobs and it would be the return of the steel industry. That didn't transpire because the thousands of jobs that happened here were temporary workers.
Anybody that comes to step foot on this ground, your family, that you can live and work and play here. We gave birth to unions. We gave birth to the steel industry. We were told that there were going to be jobs, and a lot of jobs, for people to come out of high school and to trade, to go into this workforce and make a career. I don't see that. I see cars from California, Arizona, Panhandle. They said, oh, 10,000 going to build it, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 going to work in it. Now, all of a sudden, we're hearing it's only going to be 600. Now, the economics you had are no longer there. If you say you're a good neighbor, and that's been your mantra the whole time, tell me everything. Leave nothing to chance.
This plant has the potential to emit 516 tons per year of volatile organic compounds, also called VOCs. And they are deadly for everyone because they combine with nitrogen oxides and sunlight to form ozone. It's invisible. This is not the black soot on your doorstop that people complained about years ago. It's something you cannot see.
Shell cracker plant isn't even open yet. First problem they had was a gas that came out of the electric high voltage transformers. Second problem, Vanport and Beaver, they were reporting a maple syrup smell, and Shell was mixing different chemicals to clean out some of the pipes. They still haven't given us an MSDS sheet on that yet.
It is big, it's huge, it's mammoth, it's a behemoth, and it is connected. It's got all these tentacles that spread out over the region.
Are we doing everything that we can to make sure that it's safe? You hear different, oh, this is safe, but then you hear something about the water being off. Then you had a house blow up because they was running lines in Center Township.
We have a thing called air inversions. Air is warmer up here than down below. It holds everything in, and we're like in this tunnel. You're gonna have those 7 smokestacks venting out, that if we have an air inversion that lasts more than a day, we're gonna have a lot of sick people.
They came in with the expectation of bringing jobs. They came in with the expectation of being diverse. They came in with the expectation of changing the environment, to be in transparency. Okay, well, Aliquippa needs to see that. And we do, because it's not just their future at stake, it's our future at stake.
We have economic alternatives. We need our leaders to have enough imagination to embrace those alternatives and go for them big time, because our time is running out.
All right, I'd like to open it up for some reactions to the video and to the story itself.
Helen Hansel was able to win any competition.
So Bob or Terry?
I could take that. One of the things that we addressed with Shell when they were talking about building this cracker plant, they had a public meeting down at the golf course, and they broke into different sections, and I went over and met with the engineers, and I said, tell me a little bit about what you're going to build here. And they said, this is going to be the state of the art. This is going to be the top-notch plant in the United States. And they said, we have an identical plant to this down in Texas along the Gulf Coast that we're going to copy this after. And I said, okay. I said, is it real flat down there? Oh yeah, flat as a pancake. Is there a lot of wind? Oh yeah, the wind just blows out into the Gulf constantly. I asked them, the 2 engineers, did you ever hear of Denora, Pennsylvania? And they looked at each other with this dumbfounded look and said, no. And I said, well, everyone's heard about the Johnstown flood. No one seems to know about the air inversions and the pollution that killed a bunch of people and wiped out a whole town in Denora, in the river valley of the Monongahela River, which is one of the rivers that make up the Ohio River. It's just upstream from where I live. And I said, how do you plan on getting all of the smoke and pollutants from your plant up over top of the mountain, out of the river valley, and disperse it out so that us people that live in the river valleys aren't trapped in this tube of the warm air on top of the mountain and the cold air down, and it just holds you in. It says you're going to have a lot of sick and dying people when we get into an air inversion. Well, the one engineer walked away, and the other guy put his hand on his chest and said, "I have high blood pressure. Do you mind if I sit down?" I said, "No, you sit down. We're going to have a conversation." So that was my start with Shell's engineers before they even cut ground. Next. Terry?
I just want to thank Kristina for doing this article. It is a terrific article. It covers so much ground, and there's so much ground to cover. Not sure where to start. There are health impacts. There's, obviously there are health impacts, but there's also now the plastic crisis. It's a global threat, and it's tied up with the climate crisis. And this plant is, turning, it's also got this connection to everything in the way of infrastructure that's happening all across southwestern Pennsylvania. So Dr. Cliff Loud, one of my colleagues, is fond of saying they're building a chemical plant around us, and that's exactly what's happening. We are getting frac wells and compressor stations and pipelines and injection wells, and there's a total of 9 types of fracking infrastructure. And I will say, while I have the opportunity, that Clean Air Council has a campaign for pushing back on that to get us distances from all those 9 types of infrastructure in our homes, schools, and hospitals. Those are distances that have been researched by their attorneys and engineers. And I think I gave Ryan a link to put in the chat, a link or 2 or 3 that will take you to information on that campaign. What we need is our legislators to listen on that front. That would be a first step in protection. It's not absolute protection, but it would help. So I just wanted to mention that and give somebody else a chance to talk here then.
Ryan, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks, Terry. So one thing I wanted to ask you both about is to talk a little bit about your experience with organizing in the region. I know both of you have experience, and you've seen, not just this issue, but many issues, and you can connect the dots and kind of talk a little bit about your history with organizing. And then I want to ask you to dig into some of what you see as a solution to this, and kind of give, expand on that a little bit more as I gather those links to put in the chat for everybody. And we're also going to be posting all these links and related resources along with the replay to this video and discussion in Halt to Harm Network, so that we can all stay in touch and follow up on it. But yeah, Bob, can you tell us a little bit about your history, and then Terry as well, just so everybody can get to know you a little bit?
Yeah, I worked for a lot of years with the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and I was a union electrician. And one of the side jobs I had with them was a union organizer. And I would go out and help organize different companies that wanted to have union representation. So I also worked with the AFL-CIO in the spring and fall of every year with the elections, and it came with organizing volunteers. We could only spend money on union education, and I had a lot of years experience with constantly going out, talking to people, making phone calls, door knocking. We didn't do as much media as we have with BC-MAC. BC-MAC has done a lot of meeting with different medias, writing letters to the editor, going to all of the different get-togethers with the EPA, Pennsylvania DEP. I've worked with a lot of the national environmental groups. We've gone to DC and met with the legislature, met with the Senate, met with the EPA, and even President Obama sent a special group over to meet with us to talk about environmental issues. So those were a lot of things that BC-MAC brought to the table, and we've now created a new group called Eyes on Shell. We have t-shirts. So what we're doing is we're engaging the general public to call in about anything they see, hear, smell, feel, or whatever. And one of the things I was saying before was, okay, we've gathered up all this information about what's going on with these chemical plants. What are we going to do about it? So we got a list of who's going to do the policing. Is it going to be the EPA? Is it going to be the Coast Guard on the river? Is it going to be local emergency management? Is it going to be the Pennsylvania DEP? Is it going to be your local legislator or senator? We have all their numbers now. And we put that together, and this Eyes on Shell is an information area now that I think would be helpful all around the country if all of the other environmental groups would do the same thing. And it would be really helpful because most people just say, what can I do? That's basically a common denominator when something happens. What can I do? I'm nobody. I'm just this little person. Guess what? That one phone call makes a big difference when the police show up. So thank you.
Well, I'll jump in and say, Bob and I go way back. 2010 was when BC-MAC started. 2011, I joined them, or I've been reading about fracking and thinking, oh, maybe initially I thought this is something good for Beaver County. We're certainly due for some economic boom of some sort here. But it didn't take long for me to do a little research and figure out that, maybe a matter of a few months, that this was a very bad idea. And then I looked around to see if anybody else was thinking the same thing, found BC-MAC folks and kindred spirits there, joined forces in opposing fracking for several years. And at that point, Shell was sort of teasing Beaver County. They weren't sure they were going to come here, and we certainly hoped they didn't. And so we were sort of in denial. But then in 2016, by 2016, they were moving very quickly and moving to get their permits in place. And Bob actually said to me at a meeting, or said to everybody at a meeting, Clean Air Council's looking for folks to go canvassing door to door to get popular feedback on this idea of a fence line monitoring system around the plant, something that Shell said was unnecessary. So we did. We canvassed in Beaver and Vanport and Potter Township for petition for that fence line monitoring system. And we got 750 signatures, which we presented to the Potter Township supervisors. And at that point, that was my introduction to Clean Air Council, started with that canvassing. I will say that they went on with Environmental Integrity Project to win a 2-year legal battle for that system, which provides a measure of protection, but there's so much more to be done. And that's a very good thing. Also, Clean Air Council put out a health impacts assessment in 2014 that we got to the county commissioners. Bob took them to those 76-page booklet on health impacts that he took to the county commissioners. So all of that was part of my activism. And from there, I just, for the last 6 years, have been doing anything that I can in the way of canvassing, in the way of testifying at hearings and at press conferences. We also in 2017 launched, well, BCMAC launched a group called Reimagine Beaver County that is still fighting to bring green industries and businesses to Beaver County as an alternative. And Reimagine Beaver County has been going down that path since 2017, and hope to hear more about that soon. We've, as Bob said, we've written letters to the editor, we've written op-eds, we have social media going now, blogs. I've written all sorts of local campaigns crop up, like the Big Sewickley Creek campaign, where residents are rallying to push back on a driller for the third time, who's trying to draw massive amounts of water from a beloved local creek that crosses 12 municipalities in Beaver County and overlaps into Allegheny County. So we're doing all of those things. We're trying to do outreach to EJ communities that are so impacted, like Aliquippa that you saw in the video. This is all part of what we do, plus a monitoring system. We're setting up air monitors in a system around the plant, and we're monitoring for air, noise, light, and water with the help of our Eyes on Shell watchdog team participants. We're getting 50 to 70 participants on each monthly Zoom now. And some people are sort of gelling as a community there, able to do journaling, health diaries, to send us videos and photos. And all of this is a way of, I think, putting some agency back in the hands of the people.
Yeah, that's really striking to me, what you're describing about the engineers and, choosing this location and working on building out this facility, but basically leaving it up to people to have any kind of response around how to deal with the impacts and the harms. And you've created so much space and structures and organizing to make that possible. What are some things that you need support with, or what are ways that some of us who are here learning about this and hearing from you, how can we get involved and help? Like, what are all the different ways besides participating in the watchdog group?
Well, go ahead, Bob.
There's strength in numbers. And you can't start a war without an army. Let's join together across the country and say enough is enough. That in Pennsylvania, I'm taking on all of the candidates that are running for government office in Pennsylvania. And I tell them that when I was mayor, I used to give the oath of office. In that oath of office, you would swear that you would obey and defend the Constitution of the United States and Pennsylvania with fidelity. That's here in Pennsylvania. And that we have Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution called the environmental rights of all Pennsylvanians. And that we have a right to clean air and fresh water and to preserve the land, not only for ourselves, but for future generations. And I expect anybody running for office that's going to take those positions of public trust, that they fulfill their obligation and duty of office, and that is to obey and to defend our constitutions. That is the job. It's not reinventing the wheel. And I can get a lot of jaws dropping on that one. And but I think it's really important that we bring reality back to government, that we have environmental laws that need to be enforced. And that's what the job is. And if they can't do it, they ought to move aside and get somebody in there that can do the job. It doesn't matter, not being political party wise, but I am being political that they have to do their job or we're not going to pay them. Hire them just like anybody else.
I would echo what Bob said. We have to protect ourselves as residents. The industry has not talked about health impacts at all, or any of the other impacts. Neither has our government. Our local leaders are silent about this in many ways. And so it's up to us and the media, as they're coming on board here, to make this known, to make this information known, because the industry is encroaching on residential lives in so many different ways. Specific things besides signing the Clean Air Council petition for the setbacks, the protective buffers that Ryan has put in the chat, joining Eyes on Shell, because there's something for everyone there. Some people are more interested in noise pollution, some in water pollution. We talk about how you can join up with the Nurdle Patrol and track the water pollution that's going on with nurdles. We talk about how you can join an asthma study that's going to be conducted in Beaver County. We talk about how you can journal and do the health diaries. And we also, last program, we had a to-do list for Shell, things that we think Shell should do beyond what is legally required, beyond that, because they say they want to be a good neighbor. And we have a list of 6 big items and about 4 or 5 specific things beneath each of those items. And I sent Ryan another link for that. And if you go into that link, you can see that list. And if you would just call the Shell hotline about just one bullet on that list, we hope that would make a difference, that the volume of calls and feedback would put some pressure on Shell to do the things they should be doing for the residents' protection and the protection of the environment.
Part of what you mean by strength in numbers is also realizing that even though it's just one phone call, that it's going to add up. That you might not feel like you're part of a large group of people when you're doing this single thing, especially when you're by yourself making a phone call, but this really is happening. There's a lot of people that are stepping up and making these calls. I just put the links in the chat for you, Terry. Thank you so much for sharing those.
Oh, thank
You know,
you.
Ryan, if I could follow up on something, I'll follow up on that. That was one of, I was talking with Kristina about this, reporting on this, and she was saying that the one thing that kind of surprised her, it was that in talking with politicians, how little kind of they weighted or even considered the public health kind of implications of this. And so she asked, I mean, I remember, she was very vividly remembered one conversation with a politician, and it never made it into the story, but she was asking him about if he had heard opposition to the project from constituents. And he was like, no, all I've heard is, only from some advocates who were ideologically opposed, right? So he just kind of discounted this whole sector, right? And they were not his constituents, right? I mean, they were just, he knew what they were going to say, and it got discounted. And so as Kristina started asking him about, whether lawmakers should consider the public health impacts and look at the kind of some of the health concerns that are, and ailments that are kind of running through his family and his community cancer rates and whatnot. She could see it starting to churn in his head. And I doubt she changed this politician's mind, but she was able to kind of, push him a little bit and make him see that there is another story. And I think that speaks, Terry, to what you were saying, and Ryan, what you were saying about just it's phone calls. It's like, oh, there's another point of view out there, and it's not coming from, a group so much. It's you as an individual, you as a resident. And I think that is you can feel like, oh, I'm just one voice, but I think we underestimate that power.
We need a groundswell of public pressure. We really do. And that takes individuals adding up to those numbers. Definitely.
I agree.
Yeah. So I want to see if Lois is here, and if Lois, if you're here and you want to unmute yourself and say hi.
Hi, I am here. How are you? I apologize for being off camera, and I apologize for being a few minutes late. I had a child emergency that I had to deal with, so my apologies. But yeah, I am here, and I'd really just like to echo what Terry had said about a groundswell of people that are concerned, and I think really what happens within communities that are used to the extractive industry is that the industry tells them basically like there's nothing that you can do, you can't go up against this, so that really puts people really sort of like what shaking their heads, and what can we do, and as you said, like what can one person do, but as Bob said, there's strength in numbers. And the more people that become involved and report things and let people know what's happening in their area, they're not just the one lone person anymore. And, industry likes to say things that, that's just one person and they're radical or they're terrorists or something like that. Well, there's a lot of people that we're all not radicals or terrorists or just that one person that's complaining about problems and issues all the time. So I agree highly with there is definitely strength in numbers.
Thanks, Lois. It's great to see you here. Thanks for joining. And also wanted to, Rachel, give you a chance to share some of your thoughts and introduce your organizing a little bit with Moms Clean Air Force.
Hi, yes, thank you. My name is Rachel Meyer. I'm working with Moms Clean Air Force, which is an organization with over 1 million moms and dads across the country, all working together for clean air, and that includes the climate crisis for the health of our children. And I would just add to this discussion about what can people do about this cracker plant here in Beaver County. That, if we think about why is it here and why is there fracking to supply ethane to this plant? Well, this plant is producing plastics. And so, we need to also be aware of the need for alternatives to plastics. There's a danger of thinking, well, these plastics can be recycled and this can be circular and we can make this work, but in the end, it just doesn't work. There's far less than 10% of plastics that actually get recycled. There's talk now of chemical recycling, which is really plastic incineration, and it's just prolonging the greenhouse gases and the fossil fuels, because really it's melting this plastic back down into the fossil fuels and burning those. So that also is something that I think we all can do, is to demand alternatives to plastics and not let that demand for plastics continue.
I would just second that, because the plastics industry has made consumers feel guilty. It's your fault for not recycling properly. But as Rachel said, it's less than 10% of those plastics that actually do get recycled. And, one of the reasons that we've been so slow to get a transition to renewable energy, or to get a world where there's bans on plastic bags, something that simple, is the subsidies that are given to the fossil fuel industry through our legislature. Put the pressure on the legislators to get away from those subsidies. And that's the only way we're going to get the growth that we need on the renewable front, on cutting back or finding alternatives to plastic and cutting back the supply end of that chain.
Yeah, there was a great quote that Kristina has in her story from Rebecca Scott at the University of Missouri, but it was, "You have to drill the wells to support the petrochemical plants." but you also have to build the petrochemical plant to support the wells. It's a Ponzi scheme for natural gas. And that has just stuck with me.
That's a great quote. I agree.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that statement and agree with that completely. And I think one of the things that that I do within my work with the Clean Air Council is I host tours for people to actually see where the supply for the petrochemical hub is coming from, and people don't really understand that. And industry does a good job of separating everything from people so that they don't connect the dots, and making them understand that this frack gas is really, we're fracking for plastics, as my friend and colleague Dr. Katire likes to say, but it's so very true. So I invite people to come out and schedule a tour with me, or groups of people to come out and actually talk to people who have been negatively impacted by the oil and gas industry, and see how perversive it is in Washington County, which is where I live. And, it's the most heavily fracked county in our state, and talk to people that have had adverse health impacts, and, they can't move, and they have, their land is destroyed. They can't farm on it. Their air and their water has been contaminated. And, just to actually see that sometimes up front and personal, and actually speak to another human being about it, can really, change some people's minds.
Lois's frackland tours are great. And, as I think Kristina mentioned in her article, this plant is going to require 1,000 new frack wells every 3 to 5 years. And that everywhere you got a frack well, you got to have compressor stations and the pipelines and the gathering lines and the injection wells and the whole rest of it.
And it's also worth noting, this plant is not by itself. There are what's one of 5 that are proposed for the Ohio River Valley.
Yeah, I hope we haven't heard a lot about those other plants, except for the one in Belmont County, Ohio, which is still sort of pending and in limbo. But fortunately, I think the pushback has made a difference on that front. I sure hope so.
Well, this is where if I could, Bonnie had a question that kind of scrolled past us. Is it too late to stop this plant? And I'd be curious to hear your guys' perspectives. I mean, I think that this infrastructure is in, and we're living with it, and it's a matter of kind of containment and monitoring and bird dogging them. But Bob, I'd love I'd be curious to hear your guys' thoughts about the Formasa plant down in Louisiana got stopped before, and partly it was because there was nothing in the ground. Just be curious, and Bob, it sounds like you've got a comment. Your guys' thought about, like, there's a lot of Ohio River Valley kind of build-out that are planned, and how do we do this?
Yeah, we've been following a lot of the international comments about this cracker plant, and I think it all pivots on the economy and the supply and demand. We've been getting different feedback on, is there really going to be that big of a demand when we have such a world glut? And the problem with getting rid of the 90% that cannot be recycled, those are business decisions that are being made today. And we also heard that this plant is not going to start up and go 100% because of the market. My battery's getting low. Hold on a minute.
Well, Bob disappears. I did a little story about the Formosa ruling yesterday, and one of the fascinating nugget I found was that the company's credit rating from Standard & Poor's went up after the feds denied their permit, because apparently the credit rating, they were like, this is too big an investment in an uncertain market.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the market is going to tell what's going to happen. We can bring forward the health benefits and how it's affecting our communities. But on the other side is the cash flow that keeps these plants going. Now, if those investors and the people that are investing their money are watching how this market's going to go, you'll see it speed up or slow down depending on the price of the wet gas. And where's the market? We were promised that when this plant was starting up, we would have these plants built all around this area to make plastic products. We're all looking, we haven't seen any. So if they're going to start up and start producing these thousands and thousands of tons of nurdles, are they going to sit on the train cars? Are they going to go in silos? Where are they going? That should be an indicator of what's going to really happen. You can only make so much, and it will backlash all the way back to the wells, because if they're not going to be making as many nurdles, they're not going to be buying as much wet gas. And if they're not buying as much wet gas, they're not going to drill more wells. So it's a whole chain of events that's going to backlash on them. And it all has to deal with, are you going to be able to take this product to market? And are we going to do it all in the United States, or is it going to get shipped overseas? Are we going to transport this wet gas over to Europe and they're going to make nurdles? How's this story going to play out? It's a lot's up in the air, and they don't like to share information too well.
In that same vein, the state of Pennsylvania gave this plant a $1.65 billion tax break. And the 600 jobs, of which maybe 400 generous might go to locals. Shell has said 40 to 75% are going to locals. That's quite a range. And that comes down to a subsidy by the state of almost $2.7 million per job. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? And then there are all the externalized costs, the cost of the healthcare, millions for that are not counted into the equation. The social costs not counted into the equation. The climate change costs not counted into the equation, and of course the plastic too.
Terry, I lived through this era of when the steel mills went down. Our area was all steel industry. They dominated. And when Ronald Reagan was president, they ended up they stopped all the tariffs, and he told the steel industry, swim or sink. We're not subsidizing you. And guess what? Every steel mill from the Atlantic shore to the Pacific shore closed their doors overnight. Why can't this happen to the oil and gas industry? Why should we subsidize a profitable industry? Is that true capitalism? I don't think so. It only works when the opposite party's making gains, and their party, when their party's making gains and the opposite party's failing. So it's a double standard in politics that we're dealing with. So if they're going to have true capitalism, it's swim or sink. Let's take all the subsidies off of fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Let's see them compete against renewables. They can't do it.
Yeah.
They cannot do it without subsidies. So we're dealing with a political double standard, and it's got to stop, and we got to call them on it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you got to also be careful. We're going to hear a lot about any attempt the industry can make to parachute out of, first of all, fossil fuel dependence. They went to plastics. But, if plastics don't work, there's this idea of carbon capture and storage that's fueled by hydrogen. Well, that's just another way of prolonging our dependence on fossil fuels. So there will be schemes like that, and it sounds good to the general public, but because you want a solution to exist for the climate crisis and the rest, doesn't mean that this is necessarily it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I go back to the wording that the industry used and government uses. Fossil fuels are a bridge fuel. A bridge will take you from one side of the river to the other. The environmentalists call it a gangplank because you're going to get out in the middle and you're going to fall in. And that's where we're at with global warming and the plastic glut.
One of the things that's standing out from the last 10 minutes or so is just that while this plant has been constructed over the past 5 years, that it's still dependent on everything else. So the operation of the plant and the harms that it causes into the foreseeable future is not inevitable as it may seem, because it is very connected to where do the nurdles go. It's very connected to the economy. It's connected to all these other factors, right? So in many ways, that feels hopeful. It feels like there's still foreseeable victories, many ahead if we keep fighting. Is that a correct understanding? And where do you source some of your energy and hope for moving forward in your organizing?
If you look at the history of the United States, we're constantly going through an evolutionary changes. They say the only thing that's constant is change. And there's some other laws of friction. Anytime you change direction, there's friction and heat, but nothing grows without thunder showers. So we have to take these things into consideration, that it isn't the end of the world because we're improving. 10 years ago, we're still using dial phones. You don't see a person today without a new phone in their hand. They're walking out into traffic with them. It's what changes in a 10-year period of time?
You might not have even been able to imagine it 10 years ago.
No. So, so we're constantly on the move. And if you stand out in the middle of the stream and try to push the water back upstream, you're going to stand there with your tongue hanging out for a long time.
And part of the work of organizing is to help shape where that stream is going. It's not to try to, get caught up in it so much, right?
Correct.
And that puts us on the edges, right? It's why some of us feel like outsiders sometimes. It's why we might feel like we're paying attention to something that our people around us aren't as concerned about, because that's where we are. We're on the edge. We're trying to shape this, right?
We are shaping.
Yeah. We're getting close to the top of the hour, and I wanted to ask each of you to share your reactions to this article and what you hope can be done with this journalism moving forward. This article was just published today. There's an opportunity to really share this far and wide and to bring this conversation to the forefront. Can you make some comments on that as we get toward the end?
I can
Douglas is
start.
going to have to hop off in a couple minutes. Just heads up. But I'm going to stick around, with you all till the top of the hour.
I am the least important person here. I do have to leave in 2 minutes, but Rachel, I would love to hear your thing. I'd love to hear from others before me.
Okay, thanks. Well, I would just say, it gives me a lot of hope that this information is getting out there. We're seeing, there's been so much greenwashing, so much information painting things to be so much better for health and the environment than they actually are. And now people are starting to see that. And, the work Eyes on Shell is doing as a part of this. What the cracker plant is doing right now with starting up is allowing people to see the truth of what's happening here. And people are starting to push back. They're seeing that there's not as many jobs as were promised. They're seeing that there is smoke going into the air and plastic going into the water. And I just really hope, and what gives me hope as an organizer is that by bringing this all to light, that people come together, they work to protect each other's health. We push back against the pollution, get things more regulated, create less demand, just make it very difficult for all this plastic to be produced. And that we as a region who traditionally, we take a lot of pride in our work ethic, we're hardworking people, that we see that there's alternatives to this, that we have more sustainable ways that we can make a living and provide for our families and communities, and that we don't have to continue to hurt ourselves extracting and burning fossil fuels. That's what I'll say about that.
So well said. And I would just add that, maybe the plastics are a rallying point, because no matter what side of the political aisle people are on, I have heard them talk about the sort of the scourge of plastic. It's everywhere. It's on our streets. It's on our beaches. And we can see it accumulating. And, beyond the environmental effects, it's just something that hits very close to home. So I'm hoping that will be a rallying point. And I think this article gives me hope too. Yeah. And I would hope that, local TV stations and local newspapers would pick it up, and that it would get the widest possible audience.
I wanted to say, just from, where do we get our inspiration from? I get that from really like the youth and my children. Like I look at my daughter who's going to be 13, and, my other children that are, most adults now, and some are, but I really think that change, no matter what it is, whether it's good or bad, is difficult. And I agree with Bob that, good change is hard, and people really want to hold into, the old ways of doing things because that's all they know. And then they're nervous and afraid with it. And this article, as with all articles that Kristina does, and that I've been fortunate enough to even be part of, are just, again, it's another seed that gets planted. So people don't just have one perspective that the industry gives them. They have a perspective from, people that are really living this and actually what is really happening. And it is the truth narrative that needs to keep moving forward and coming out. And with articles such as this one and past articles and more research every day, this again allows us as people that are living with this and people that are activists and working in this realm, that what's really happening can no longer be denied. So that's how I feel about the article. And again, I just think it's another excellent seed that's going to plant and grow.
Yeah,
I've got to run. But I just want to say, I just appreciate everything all you guys are doing, and we're going to keep on this story, and we're going to keep on this story because of the work all of you guys are bringing and the attention you're bringing to it. So I'm really honored, Terry, Lois, Rachel, Bob, for the work you're doing. And I'm just sorry I have to leave before we wrap up the conversation, but thank you.
One quick quote, Doug. Breathing isn't red or blue. It belongs to me and you.
I like that. I will take that.
Hey, good.
Take care.
See you, Douglas. I also wanted to mention that next week, I just wanted to say, thanks to Marty who brought this up in the chat as well. Next week is a really big week. As the eyes of the world, 22 countries are looking to southwestern Pennsylvania, and activists from a lot of different organizations around the region are working hard to raise the importance of climate justice. I'll put a link in the chat, but if any of you who are working on this, please feel free to jump in. The ministerial meeting that's coming up and the climate justice tours, media work, and things like that.
Yeah, Terry and I will both be hosting a tour. I'll be hosting a tour on Friday beginning at 1 p.m. and Terry's going to be hosting the petrochemical tours as well. And there's a midstream tour, a steel tour. So there's a lot of tours and they're getting filled up. So that's great.
We have a whole team on our tour, yeah. People,
Yeah.
including Rachel and Bob, if you're going to speak up, yeah.
Great. Yeah. So Marty just put the links in the chat to that. So thanks, Marty. And yeah, anybody else have any thoughts on that or want to add anything to that?
Those tours are important in that they're starting to show the changes. The one steel company across the river making parts for solar panels. There's different factories that are starting to use renewables for making different products. And I think that this Reinvent Beaver County and Reinvent Appalachia groups are working hard to start to get industrial economic plants to where industries can move in to make renewables and start to phase out petrochemicals. And it's taken time, but the evolution is going on. It's going to happen. You're going to see more electric cars, get the petro fuel off of the roads. Cars and trucks are going off. I would like to see the railroads in the United States become more electric and get rid of the diesel. There's just a lot of things that could make the change, but we have to think our way through it. We have to participate.
Thank you. So we've been posting this link a couple of times in the chat. It's like Marty just added a link as well, but Health to Harm Network is our platform where leaders from around the country can create profiles and stay connected. We have a few hundred people who have joined this network and are using it. We've recently made some big upgrades, and it's where you can find all the recordings from events like this, as well as a place to have follow-up conversations. So I'm going to be posting all the links that have been shared so far. And especially want to thank Kristina and Terry, who've shared a whole bunch of different links for us to compile along with this story. So please take a moment and visit that link in Halt to Harm Network and create an account if you haven't already. If you have any questions or need any help getting set up in the network, feel free to reach out to me. That's what I'm here to help with, is to create that space for us to stay connected and share resources. A lot of different topics were brought up today, and it's a really good opportunity to keep conversations moving forward on these things. And I also just want to thank all of you so much for joining us today. Lois, Rachel, Terry, and Bob, it's really good to connect with you and get to know your story a little bit more as well. And I just feel honored that I was able to host this event. So thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Anything else that you want to add before we wrap up? Any final links or requests from our audience? We have a wonderful audience today. Thanks to everybody as well who's here with us live.
Read the article.
Share it.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. And Melissa says in the chat, thanks for this powerful and helpful meeting. Much appreciate the speakers and of course the journalists who continue to bring these issues to the sunshine. Also, thanks Rachel for sharing the link to Mom's Clean Air Force. the toxic chemicals, plastics page on the website?
There are also very like basic fact sheets on petrochemicals in your health and ethane cracker plants. So there's a lot of like foundational information there.
Great, perfect. Yeah, we all can use those tools in the work that we're doing. So thanks for sharing that. Barbara just added Save Our Streams PA is doing a well tour October 7th, 8th, and 9th. Barbara, if that's something, if you want to share that in the network, we have a network events calendar where a lot of upcoming events are posted. So please feel free to add that to the network or send me an email.
Sure. Do you have a direct link?
Great, thank you. I'm going to put my email in the chat as well. Also, there's going to be, oops, that was the wrong email. Ryan@healththeharm.net is where you can reach me. And there's also going to be a quick survey sent in your email wrapping up this event. So we just love feedback and any ideas for ways to improve the events that we're hosting in Health the Harm Network. Thank you. Marin says there's an art build this weekend. That sounds great. Thanks so much, Marin. Fantastic.
I'm on the road, so I can't post a link, but a lot of you have it, and someone wants to throw a link to the Salon Marin's List, something like marinslist.blogspot.com/September something or other.
Awesome. Thank you.
And we'll be featuring Shanti Gampa Rabindran's book called America's Energy Gamble, which is very linked to what's going on at the ministerial and the alt ministerial, as I like to call it.
Great. Thanks, Marin. I just put that link in the chat for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate the work you're doing. All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Hey, Ryan, thanks.
Yeah. Connect with you later.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, Lois.